All right. Welcome to today's live show where we bring entrepreneur success stories to you by sharing mistakes to help you avoid and accelerate your growth. Together, we lift everyone up. Today, we feature Dr. Jeffrey Magee. Dr. Magee helps entrepreneurial business owners, C-suite leaders, and military generals significantly increase their organizational effectiveness. He is a publisher of the professional performance magazine.com, as well as the publisher author of 31 books translated into 21 languages, including 4 bestsellers. He has been a successful entrepreneur for over 3 decades and counting. He is also been featured in hundreds of magazines, newspaper, including Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fox, NBC, you name it. How are you doing today, Dr. Magee?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Kent. Good to see you again. We've been working together from before COVID, during
That's right.
COVID, and now post-COVID. You're looking great.
Likewise, where are you calling in from?
I am calling in from where I live and operate, which is Las Vegas, Nevada. And in the past 10 days, I've been in 8 cities from coast to coast and border to border.
Oh, wow. Loving it. Las Vegas, huh?
Las Vegas is doing good, but it wants you to come. It needs all of you to bring your money. It's desperately wanting more people.
You're definitely getting that right now during COVID and
Yes.
post-COVID. Right now, everyone loves this good success story, especially one that's packed with wisdom, nuggets that they can use to avoid their own mistakes, right? So they can accelerate on their own journey. Let's take a walk down the memory lane. Tell us what were you doing prior to making the switch to entrepreneurship?
Great questions. I think a lot of us, and just you said, take a trip back down memory lane and replay the videotape. Whether one went to college or not, that transition period when you leave high school and go to the next chapter of your life. So that's kind of where I think a lot of us could back up the videotape and start recognizing, before high school, the decisions we made, and maybe those were influenced upon us by the people in our sphere of influence, has a lot to do with the trajectory of where you're going to go in life. But the reality is, once you leave high school, you really start influencing that at warp speed. And yes, if you have a good support system around you, that can help to calibrate your success. But with that, to answer the question, for a lot of us, I think we kind of did not pick a path of a solo practitioner or being an entrepreneur. The reality is, when you go back to that age, it was, what are my employment options on the planet? Do I go to work for the military? A phenomenal option. Do I go to work for a major corporation? Phenomenal opportunity. Do I go to work for a smaller business? Phenomenal opportunity. I think that's where most people's brains are calibrated. So where I would start my story is right there. So my kind of career pathway leaving high school was to go to college on an athletic scholarship and a journalism scholarship to be a journalist. That was my passion. That was my energy. And unlike a lot of the people at my age, I had already had hundreds of articles published in a major city newspaper before I went to college. So after college, I spent some time in Kansas City as both broadcast and print journalism. Loved it. Loved the profession. But I got really turned off back in the 80s. And so the date line is also important to Kent, your story for our viewers today. So I got turned off in the 80s that journalism really seemed to be a very negative, toxic industry where people truly lived to find and write and report on just something negative. It was as if you couldn't celebrate anyone's successes. There had to be a skeleton in the closet. You had to find a way to knock them down. And so I left journalism cold. And again, thank God, decades later, journalism is not like that at all today. Just let that one sink into everyone's head. So again, being an entrepreneur has a lot to do with Kent's question in my last statement, because any successful entrepreneur you'll meet that I've met, they don't hang around negative people and influences, because that is the norm. That's almost like the Olympic sport of the planet today is, what can you bitch about next? And how can you, gossip about or knock someone down? So I went into sales, which wasn't what I wanted to do in life. When you need a job, there's always a sales job out there. And I went to work for a Fortune 100 corporation. American Home Products was its name. And I was on a trajectory for a great life. And if I'd stayed there, then you and I wouldn't be talking today. I would have been, corporate employee. But what happened in that pathway is where the real answer comes to answering your question, Ken. So part of being a journalist is a little bit entrepreneurial because you have to find the story. You have to make things happen. You have to sell it to your editor to want to run with it or put it on the news. But if those people only want the negative, then you're starting to realize I don't have a marketplace for that, or at that time I didn't. So when I went to work for American Home Products, I had some great successes and I had some great people around me. But what led me to my entrepreneurial pathway the past 30 years is that experience. So sometimes in life, you're going to run into people that don't like you. They may not like you just because your skin color, which you and I have nothing to do with that, or your gender, got nothing to do with that. Your ethnicity, got nothing to do with that. So you run into people that don't like you for whatever reason. And I had a boss like that. And he started forging my signature on documents to make the case to basically get me fired. And in those days, there was a lot of layers between you as sales professional out in the field and your boss, the district manager and the regional manager and the vice president of corporate office. And what I learned, lesson one, is that, again, a lot of people don't really give a crap about your problem. Number two, they also don't really care to hear your story if it's negative, when they know that that negative may be truthful, but then they're going to have to deal with a lot of issues. So they push it to the side. So when I got terminated, today we would call it wrongful termination. And if I was a different gender or ethnicity, I and you would not be talking today because I'd be very rich. So when I got fired, I went to an attorney and I sat down and showed him everything. And he basically said this. He said, Magee, here's your reality. And this, again, is a tough live podcast, folks. So if you're easily offended, you probably have already tuned me out. So you're going to miss all the golden nuggets next. He said, here's the issue. You're white, you're a male, you're college educated, you're good looking, and you got terminated, and you're rehired in less than 1 week. Write a book about it because ain't no one going to give you any money. Yeah, you got screwed. But that's where I learned about entrepreneurialism, which is if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to have thick skin for the good days and the bad days, and don't bitch. Don't become litigious. Learn from it. And then build your nucleus. So with that said, here's my golden nuggets. Number one, get the right name here. Benjamin Franklin, there we go. Had a great line. He talked about the person who empties their purse into their head will never be bankrupt. The point being your intellectual knowledge, your skills, your wisdom, your experiences, your degrees, your certifications, everything you put in your head, folks, in times like COVID that we've recently went through, or downsizing or anything else, you may lose a paycheck, your house, or your jacket. But if you got some brain power, you can present yourself to the marketplace and become successful. So clue number one for entrepreneurial success is what do you know? Second from that is who do you know? So just like a major corporation, one of the things I learned out of it is, do you have a unique deliverable to the marketplace that will benefit the marketplace? And if you can bring value, you will always have a customer, because an abundance mentality never gets empty. And as a Fortune 500 company, successful in theory because it has a board of directors, even if you're watching today and you're a small business professional or a solo practitioner or a large business, you can have what I call a mental advisory board. Same premise as a board of directors, but mentally, who are the key people around you that you can bounce ideas off of and accelerate your success, and do it for free? And I can tell you who should be on your advisory board if, Kent, you want me to go a little bit further. So let me stop there. That's where my journey came from.
No, I love that you share what you know and who you know is probably one of the two most important things in entrepreneurship. And of course, the mindset, right? Having the right mindset by being around with the right people that help accelerate your growth in the right direction. And I love that. And
you will end up having phenomenal customers and clients and colleagues and advocates. I'm very blessed today that I have phenomenal clients and client relationships and clients business speak that I would hope and believe have transcended into friendships. And now there's also a personal connect. But again, if you can bring value to the marketplace in what you deliver, or an extension of what someone else delivers, you will always be living in abundance.
So talk to us about when you switched over after you got let go, you got fired. And of course, many of us had experienced that, right? How did you go from that to owning your own and a publisher company?
So a couple thoughts. So one, the two businesses that I have been in since that date is publishing and through a media company that I own. And so that's professionalperformancemagazine.com. And we publish a magazine called Performance. Comes out every quarter. We get phenomenal personalities from around the globe to write evergreen based content articles on how to be successful. So we've had world leaders, Fortune 500 executives, business entrepreneurs, New York Times bestselling authors, celebrities, athletes, phenomenal mixture of people. One of my fascinations is American Indian heritage. So I always have a tribal Indian chief write an article in there from their heritage perspective. So a wide gamut, religious elders from around the planet in our own country. But no one can write an article that's present tense based, that deals with current events or trends, etc. But it's from their wisdom, same way you just posed the question to me, that they could share an article on how to accelerate your success. So that's why magazine has been phenomenally successful. I mean, Marriott and Mercedes and some other phenomenal people advertise them and anchors in it for many years. We have over 400,000 subscribers. It's very substantial. So that's one. The second is my talent development training company, which carries my own name, jeffreymagee.com. So again, in forging that name, I learned from my elders. You know, back in the days, I started to establish some phenomenal relationships and had mentors like the late, great Stephen Covey and Zig Ziglar, current state Brian Tracy, again, Ken Blanchard. And I started recognizing that their talent development companies were their name. So that's where it came from. Again, name it my name. But within that, what's the space that I could really own? And so again, it's leadership in sales. That's where I've grown up. That's where my experiences, that's where my degrees are. That's where my body of work is. That's where I focus in on. And again, lots of ways I've participated in this over the 30 years. I was partner in a very large training and development company that provided continuing professional education credits for lawyers and attorneys. So here's another answer to Kent, your question, that where's the space? If you're a lawyer or an attorney in the United States, if you're a CPA accountant in the United States, you have to have roughly 40 continuing professional credit hours every year to keep your license, or you're not legit. It's $1 billion industry. So again, looking at that space and saying, okay, what's a new way to deliver those deliverables that would attract a demographic to generate, millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in business every year, was its space. And so that was a place I played in. When I sold my piece of that and transitioned away, I've always stayed in all 30 years, though primarily in my same space, and that's leadership development, not in theory, and not being a talking head. And with no disrespect, there's a lot of speakers and trainers out there in that space, but they truly and sadly are not bringing any of their own intellectual capital to benefit their audience or their client. They're simply talking heads of being certified in someone else's courseware. And some of those people's courseware is really good, and some of it's outdated. Example, there's 2 major training houses today that still market programs that I actually course content designed for them over 20 years ago. So I just laugh every time I see that product or see a trainer out there delivering that topic. Like, wow, you've got the right topic. It's still needed, but the content approach is 20 years outdated. And so again, that's a little bit of the journey, and that's the 2 spaces I play in.
Beautiful story. When you think back to all these years that you've been in business, right? There got to be moments where you go back and you go, man, I've had some moments where, you just look at your mistakes, you look at some of the things that you've done that were considered wrong from your perspective. How did you overcome that? Like, how did you go pick yourself back up and continue on for the last 32 years that you've been in business?
Yeah, individuals have to reconcile that question, Ken, because that is a very, not just powerful, but a very challenging question to reconcile with. So one of mine is blunt honesty. I've lost clients because I have been blunt and honest. So part of it is then, do you reconcile in your head to bite your tongue, suck up, and not be completely honest with someone so you can keep your job, basically? But what is your deliverable? Why are you there? And there's been times that I have been blunt and honest in the necessity to help the organization, and that honesty caused me to lose my job. Now let's fast forward several years after that. Most of those organizations either A, no longer existed because they didn't listen to my honesty, or B, they're still existing, but very mediocre because of the honesty. So that would be one answer in mine, is that I've had to reconcile when to just shut up. And I have found that there's times I now do that, but I don't feel good about myself because I'm not being genuine to my messaging or what I'm really about. But the client sometimes doesn't want to hear that honesty. Again, that would be one. I think a second one, there's been times when I have been hijacked. People have taken my intellectual property. They've taken my product. And they have used it in a way to benefit them and completely squeeze me out of it. And I've had to learn to just, don't get the lawyers involved. I should have, I could have, but don't. Just because you could have and should have doesn't mean you.
Great decision.
And I've had that happen. I've had that happen as recently, just, again, as we're airing this, if you look at the dateline, everyone, because we're trying to also keep our Q&A more evergreen here today. So those of you that are watching us on repeat, these ideas have value to you right now. I've also learned that, sometimes it's just not worth it. And I've had, at the time of this recording, a major national association that recently did that. They basically have hired someone who's incredibly toxic to the organization. That person has worked to actually get about a dozen members of the association early retired or fired. So now everyone in the know is gone, and this person's hijacked two of my proposals, and they're being implemented, in spirit. Maybe not exactly as I delivered them, but again, those are two very raw, true stories that you've got to reconcile. Do you push it or not? And for me, I've learned more often of late, just don't push it because it's not worth it in the end. And I use that because, again, I have more of what I work every day to have more of an abundance mentality. How much work do I really need and want? What do I really want to be doing? So even if I did push any of those, what do I win? And is that really taking me where I want to go? Just walk away.
Exactly. It's not worth the headache, right?
Nope.
When it comes to getting all the legal and everybody involved, it's not even worth it.
People will display their integrity. People will display their ethics. People will reveal the real them. And I am a big believer, what goes around comes around. So people
100%.
will know. They may not stand up and defend you, but they'll know, and that's fine too. That's one of them. Again, some of the other lessons learned, again, a couple of the downsizings I experienced decades ago, which put me onto this trajectory. I'm actually glad those downsizings happened, or I would have been a creature of someone else's environment. I would have been a creature of someone else's business. I would have made someone else really wealthy. Yeah, maybe I might have a comfortable retirement today, but I wouldn't be wealthy, whatever that means. I wouldn't have had the life experiences. If I had went down the corporate trajectory versus what I've had in the last 30 years, I wouldn't have been around the world to meet the phenomenal people and just et cetera. So being an entrepreneur comes with lots of headaches, a lot of down, but great gains and great ups.
Yep. And all boil down to having that abundance mentality, but abundance mindset. Now, there's a lot of entrepreneurs enter the space every single year, right? And as you know, 90% of them fail. Just because it's very challenging, there's a lot of unknowns. What advice do you give to those young entrepreneurs who just got into the space and they're trying to figure things out, and there might be close to extinction, but they don't realize it, right? What would you say to those guys so that they can avoid, going down the same path with your own experience?
Great question. Number one, if there is a trade association for your business or your profession, join it now. How active you want to be in the association, second conversation, but I join it now so you can use that trade association for best practice observations. If you're in a part of a trade association for what you do, which there is for every industry that's out there, then one, there's going to be white papers, there's going to be videos, there's going to be archived interviews like this somewhere on their website, Vault for Membership. There's going to be programs that they have as ongoing tune-ups, as webinars, podcast programs, virtual conferences, live conferences, perhaps even a local chapter. But I would, number one, if there's a trade association for what you do, you must be involved, even if you don't want to be actively involved. But the best practices, the networking, the camaraderie that can come out of that, the friendships and alliances that can come out of that to help you to accelerate your pitfalls, be able to bounce off of other business executives in a part of that group, create your own CEO to CEO peer group within them. That's starting place number one. Number two, again, you're going to need an insurance agent just as a person in life and for your business. You're going to need an accountant or a CPA for your business or your life. You're probably going to need maybe an attorney for the things a CPA can't do in your life. So let's just pause with those three. If you're going to have, in essence, an insurance agent, a CPA, and an attorney, they need to be early on a part of your free advisory board. If you're paying them money for anything else, you should once a quarter say, hey, let's meet at IHOP. Let's meet at a breakfast restaurant. Let's meet for lunch. And I'd start breakfast because you can do that before hours so no one can bitch that they can't show up. And breakfast is cheap. Buy them breakfast and use them once a quarter. Say, here's my business plan. Give me some feedback. Or here's a strategy I have. What are your thoughts? Or or here's what I'm thinking about doing to be successful. What do you think? And get some free advice from them from their perspective, because they have vested interest in your success, because the more successful you are, your insurance agent keeps getting premiums, your CPA keeps getting work, and your attorney keeps getting work. So that would be a second piece of advice that I would give. And number 3, don't compete with everyone in your space. Seriously identify who's your avatar, who's the profile of the best customer you're trying to go after, what are their needs, and stay laser focused on that. And that will get you through tough times and good times. And to your question, if I'm struggling right now, you're probably struggling because you're not doing any of the last 3 things I just said.
Love it. Those are really amazing golden nuggets that I can imagine. So, I mean, to be successful, you have to get close to your customers and understand their needs and fulfill that needs, right? Like
Absolutely.
Steve Jobs once said, like, you have to get so close to your customers that they don't even know that you're there. So think
about it, folks. Have you ever been in your house talking about something around your phone that's not the normal things you talk about or wonder, and you're talking out loud, and the next day there's all kinds of ads and commercials for it? There's your Steve Jobs. Jobs is inside your phone, whether you realize it or not. So that predictive analysis, intuitive, AI that everyone denied was happening, we now know for a fact your phone is listening. So that's exactly it. You've got to recognize who are the people around you that are listening that maybe you're not hearing and seeing what they're hearing and seeing. And if now they're in your inner loop, they can help you to avoid upcoming pitfalls, and they can accelerate you to greater successes.
Yep. Join a trade group, right? Get close to your customer, get insurance. Those are the 3 gold nuggets for young entrepreneurs if they're starting out and they want to avoid all the costly mistakes down the road. Now, last but not least, I know you are offering amazing services to C-suite executives and military generals and whatnot. What are those like today? Like, what are your programs, and how do people find you and your program?
Thank you. So again, just as you see on the screen, the spelling of my name, get that right or you'll never find me. But again, on LinkedIn, again, Dr. Jeffrey Magee, follow me. Let's connect there. But if you go to jeffreymagee.com, right there on the navigational bar is exactly what you asked, which is how I help. And so how I help is, again, different ways, whether it's advising, coaching, consulting. But my primary way that I work with a business to truly help them to affect change, embrace the right culture they're after, or develop that culture and create a workspace where everyone is truly 100% in 24/7, as they say, is one on the sales mastery side. I have a whole series of programming there, books, audios, online LMS, live training programs. And then on the talent leadership development side, which is my number 1 deliverable, is called the Leadership Academy of Excellence. And so you can kind of look there. So when I work with business enterprises with the Leadership Academy of Excellence, Kent, I'm not coming in and doing a 1-day, 1 retreat sort of initiative. I can do that. But where I could truly affect both A and E, affect massive change and growth and ROI for a business, is the Leadership Academy of Excellence. And I've identified 12 primary disciplines, skill sets, strategy, mindsets we must possess to be successful as a business. So I come in live. I work with you and your organization 1 day a month. All of it is tailored to your value system, your vision statement, your goals, what you're after, obviously, as a C-suite. But we work 1 day live a month. We have bolted into that ongoing coaching on day 2. I typically stay for a day and a half. So morning of the day 2, do live coaching. Otherwise, it's Zoom coaching. And then there's some online connectivity, writings and articles that are incorporated into that, immediate development, Excel spreadsheets. If Kent, you have a team of 2 or 200 or 2,000, I'm working with you to affect the needs you have with them, to develop them, to be able to go too deep, look at succession, etc. So that's where I work with business leaders and military generals are realizing it's a business that they're in, and the world has evolved massively. So if they look through the lens of running it, yes, with the military structure and discipline, don't ever negotiate that away, or we're going to be in deep trouble. However, you add on to that, bolt onto that best practice of business skills, better practice of business skill development and that human capital, talent development, and leadership. And that's where a lot of generals bring me in, and we do 2 and 3 day programs with their leadership. I've had, for example, I do a lot of work with the National Guard. And a senior leader of the National Guard in any of the states here in the United States, if you're tuning in outside of the United States, that person is usually a 2-star general. They're called the adjutant general. And I've got a lot of adjutant generals that bring me in to work with their executive teams. And then we start going down and doing day-long training programs with all of the leaders, both on the officer and NCO side. And I've had several National Guard states bring me in over 1, 2, and 3 year period And we touch every single person in the Garden that state to help them become better leaders, which they also can use in their personal life to be better employees or leaders in the marketplace. So they use these skills 24/7.
Love it. Love it. Dr. Magee, there's so much valuable, from the conversation that we have today. I appreciate you jumping on.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure the viewers will also appreciate some of the golden nuggets that you share with them. So thank you so much for jumping on, and have a great, day over there in Las Vegas.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone. Remember, you're leading other people to greatness, so show great every day.
Thank you. Bye for now.